Hello and welcome to another episode in the series The Bands That Rock the Planet. And I can think of no more fitting title for this episode, which features Ramones. Ramones were formed in 1974 in Queens in New York, and today we're revisiting some powerful interviews with Tommy Ramone, who was of course the drummer and later the producer of the Ramones, plus historic TV interviews with Joey, Jonny, Dee Dee and Marky Ramone. We also have Monte Melnick, the long-suffering tour manager for Ramones. We have Arturo Vega, who's often called the fifth Ramone because he was the man who designed all these Ramones t-shirts that we see all around the world. And then we have Holly Kristal, who was of course the owner and founder of the club that became known as CBGBs, which was the home to all of the bands really who formed the punk rock movement and the new wave movement in New York. And that's people like Television, Talking Heads, and most famously Ramones. So without much further ado, please sit back, relax, and enjoy Ramones, the inside story.
Well, I think that one of the reasons why magic is so wonderful is because it cannot be explained. But you know when it happens, when something magical happens, you go, what happened? That's what it was like watching the Ramones. It's like, okay, what is this?
Everybody was really scared of us. We were so different and so unique that they thought that if we became big, the whole industry would change.
Very simple, they weren't pretentious, and they were mean and nasty and also joyful. It was fun to listen to.
If you go to a Ramones song, it's like you turn it on, it's like starting an engine, boom, and you hit the gas and it goes, you know? You don't want to hit the brake and stop, you want to keep on going.
Between the period of about 1975 and 1978, we were probably the best rock and roll musicians in the world. Not in the sense of virtuosity, but in the sense of creating something original and playing pure rock and roll in an original way. Nobody could touch us then.
As you're about to discover, despite an inauspicious start to their career, Ramones went on to become a highly influential band. Although they didn't achieve the commercial success in terms of record sales that their fame would suggest, they did become a phenomenal touring outfit.
We started like the summer of 1974, and we grew up together, lived in the same block, we were friends. Something we always wanted to do.
It's an unnatural phenomena.
Can you see?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
don't do it there.
Oh,
It's not the right spot, you know? I was meaning to get a haircut.
During their lifetime from 1974 until 1996, Ramones performed 2,262 concerts. And the man who tour managed all of that is Monte Melnick. If you haven't read Monte Melnick's book on Ramones, you must do yourself a big favour and get a copy. It's a great insight into this band. Ramones were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Hi, I'm Tommy Ramone. I would like to take this opportunity to thank some people also. Mr. Seymour Stein for believing in us. Sire Records A&R, Craig Leon for his vision. The management of our beloved Danny Fields and Linda Stein. And later Gary Kurfürst. Mr. Ira Herzog for his help in keeping us solvent. Tour support of the incredibly loyal Monte Melnick. The artistic talent of Arturo Vega. The sound reinforcement skills of John Markovich. Mr. Holly Kristal, owner of CBGBs, for inviting us back and back and back.
What was the first gig like? It was terrible. First gig was terrible. T-E-R, terrible. They had terrible gear. I mean, their amps were, everything was loose, their wires and everything, and they'd start and they'd stop, and everything was squeaking and screeching, and they couldn't get through a song, and they were yelling at each other on stage. It was a comedy of errors, you might say. It was not an auspicious first set.
Tom and I were friends I knew him from junior high school and high school. And he was always into music, and he approached me and said, why don't you pick up bass and play bass? And later on, somebody approached me to open up a rehearsal and recording studio on 20th Street downtown here. And I brought Tommy in, so we designed it and built it and managed it. Since we built it and managed, we had time for our own projects. I had my bands I was working with, and Tommy had his projects. And one of his projects happened to be the Ramones. He was just actually producing them at the time. He wasn't in the group at all. He still got his idea out to somebody, and then somebody, Jonny would play the right guitar part, but he still got his idea across, even on a 4-string guitar, or 2 strings, whatever strings he had at the time, Didn't make a difference.
I'd like to thank Seymour Stein for everything he's done for the Ramones for our whole career. Danny Fields, our first manager. Gary Kurfürst, who's managed us for the last 22 years. Eddie Vedder for this great intro. All my friends that are here tonight, my wife Linda, and Ramones fans who made this all worthwhile. God bless President Bush, and God bless America.
Ramones may well have been a family, but it was certainly a dysfunctional family. There were problems with personal differences, mental illnesses, political differences, alcoholism, and drug addiction. Marky Ramone was unfortunately fired from the Ramones in 1983 due to problems with alcoholism. However, Marky fought back and overcame the disease, and in 1987 he was welcomed back into the ranks of the Ramones and remained there until the very last gig in 1996. And in 2011, Ramones were honoured with a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award.
The Ramones were a special family. No, our last names were not really Ramone. And no, we were not related by birth. But nevertheless, it was a family in feel, spirit, and emotions. As with most families, there was lots of love, along with conflict and sibling rivalry. The fact that 3 of the key founding members are not with us is profoundly sad. They are very much present in all our hearts and minds. Joey with his eternal friendliness and unlimited love of people and music. Dee Dee with his romantic joy in songwriting and other artistic endeavors. Jonny with his boundless spirit, energy, and leadership. They would be truly honored at this award, and it would mean so much to them as it does to all of us in the Ramones family. I want to thank Marky, Richie, and CJ Ramone, who came on board and kept the band going by energizing and rejuvenating them. And the whole family of Jonny, Joey, and Dee Dee, Linda, Mickey, Barbara, Dave, and John, and our loyal staff, Monte, Melnick, Arturo Vega, and Ira Herzog. Thank you so much. And here's Marky.
I was there from the beginning, pre-beginning, to after the end. So I was there.
Of course, when you hear it now, it was a very, it was happy. And I think I think the thing about it, they wrote these simple songs, and they were teenage songs.
You know, how many times have you been in a restaurant? There's like kids like annoying everybody. You know, what do you want to do? You know, kind of a funny way. You want to be in a brat. You know, some of the songs are meant to be funny in a strange way, and a lot of people think they're like the big cartoons. You know, but they were actually serious. I mean, they're saying something and it's funny, but it's something there, like being on a brat with a baseball bat or something like that.
Radio didn't take to it at all. You know, not too much. They wanted the same old, you know, that's what they were used to.
Do you get a lot of airplay?
No,
Why not?
because radio's like television, and all they want to do is push crap on the public. This show is one of the better shows on television. I'm talking about. I mean, I'd say something bad about this show too, but I just feel that way. I mean, I'm just talking about situation comedies and things like that.
If that's what
right.
Yeah.
I'm talking about situation comedies.
But what about
like
radio? Yeah, that must make you mad because you really, you really thrive. I mean, you survive on airplay, don't you? You need that to sell your records. So.
Yeah.
Well,
it helps.
Radio just turned into a big business. It's you know, just pushing mediocrity and just like it's just all they care about is money now. Like take the '60s, it was definitely the most innovative time in the history of rock and roll and radio, where they play everything and they look for new things to play. And the DJs were the hip people, and they turned us onto the Beatles and various people like that. I mean, nowadays, you know, the DJs could care less. It's just a salary, and it's just radio's totally sterile. You know, it's
They play their hit
formulated
list.
and homogenous.
You don't really need it, though.
Really?
We haven't had it, and we're getting along just fine without it. And kids don't, just because there is no radio doesn't mean that kids have to be stuck with mediocrity and not thinking. They just have to discover things on their own, whether it's us or anyone else.
There are still songs that show this mental, you know, problems and mental anguish. You know, there is sedated, his bad brain or mental themes that they enjoyed, that they like to write about.
Well, they all had mental issues. That's why they wrote a lot of songs. I don't know if you notice, there are a lot of mental references to a lot of their songs. You know, they're spoofing on their own conditions, kind of. You know what I mean?
What made the Ramones great was their sort of basic eccentricities and uniqueness combined with unfortunate emotional distress they might have brought with them and everything. And so they came with problems, you know, and these problems helped them come up with the great songs. I mean, the songs are mostly biographical or based on true events to a large extent.
Difficult for people around him, especially with his obsessions, with his obsessive compulsive behavior. Yeah, it was a pain in the neck being around him, you know. But he never really had a problem with it himself.
The OCD didn't affect his creative abilities at all. It didn't affect his performance at all or anything like that. It basically was a handicap as far as everything else was concerned.
Compelling? Oh yeah, I mean, there was nobody like him. He was completely unique. I mean, just looking at him.
I remember the first time I ever met him, when he was a young kid, you know, and he was just so striking looking and so different. And I thought this would be an interesting looking front man because he was so different from the usual lead singer front person.
When you were in front of him, you could either decide that he was a very ugly guy or that he was delicate to the point of being extremely beautiful. I could look at him from a certain angle, at a certain light, and go, oh, this is what girls see in here.
Dee Dee was hanging out. We had his girlfriend who used to beat him up every now and then. She was a good-looking woman, but very tough. Connie. So every once in a while she'd take a swing at him and did a good right hand.
Dee Dee was amazingly creative and a really hard worker. Very, very prolific.
He's like intense. He was an intense player. Whatever he did, it was intense. Writing, he was intense. Taking drugs, it was intense. He had to do too much of that. He'd write all the time. He'd just, he's always off the road. He started painting. He was a very intense character.
He was so hyper and just so, like seemed to have attention deficit disorder, like I say. And the fact that he could master the instrument was amazing.
For the Ramones, he was great. It's very simple stuff, I was a bass player, and I played a little more technical than him, but, to be in the Ramones, he was terrific,
Dee Dee was definitely a role model certainly for punk rock bass, as well as other things.
I mean, he influenced, like, the Sid Vicious was, if you look at him, he's kind of like a little Dee Dee, he wanted to wear his bass like Dee Dee, wanted to dress like Dee Dee, and so he really influenced a lot of people.
Once he was given the go-ahead to write these songs, that people were going to listen to them, I mean, he went full steam ahead.
Unfortunately, he had problems. Mental problems. He had multiple personalities, and unfortunately, his personality that kind of brought him down took over too much. If you read his books are like very depressing, and everybody's against poor Dee Dee, and it wasn't like that. It's all in his mind basically, and he just couldn't handle it. What was going on? It's unfortunate.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee Ramone, and I'd like to congratulate myself and thank myself and give myself a big pat on the back. Thank you, Dee Dee. You're very wonderful. I love you. Thank you.
He painted himself saying, "Hi, this is me, the good Dee Dee, the one that everybody loves so much. I am almost perfect. I'm wonderful." And then he drew himself on the other side of the canvas, saying, "This is the other Dee Dee. All I have is my hate power." So there's these two sides of Dee Dee.
These were the years which were marked by the arrival of Marky Ramone, who replaced Tommy Ramone as the drummer in the band. Marky played on the famous Phil Spector-produced Ramones album, End of the Century, which went on to become their biggest selling. Phil Spector became infamous when he was convicted of the 2003 murder of actress Lana Clarkson, and he was jailed for life, where he died in 2021. In 2011, during his Grammy Awards acceptance speech, Marky Ramone controversially paid tribute to Phil Spector.
I want to thank the producers, Tommy, Ed Stasium, and the producer who brought in our largest selling album, Phil Spector, who couldn't be with us here tonight. I miss him, though. He was a friend.
So in this book, I just write about everyone's personality, mine included. Mm-hmm. It's not just about the Ramones.
Right.
The making of rock and roll in high school, working with Phil Spector. And one of the rumors I wanted to stop in the books that I did read was that Phil never pointed a gun at us in the studio.
About the gun. So what is, and that rumor, that story is...
And I hate to burst anyone's bubble who thinks that and loves that story, but the guy had guns on him, but he never pointed them at us. It's a different story.
Now, the story is that he pointed the gun at Leonard Cohen. Is that right?
Yeah, he did, and he shot a gun up in the ceiling with John Lennon.
With John Lennon. In the book, there's you tell the story of that, and he pulls a gun out, and I guess Jonny and Dee Dee get very spooked by that.
No, what happened is he had guns in holsters, and he had a license to carry. Mm-hmm. So Phil was a little guy. He was about 5'5". So they were heavy on his shoulder, and he had one here. I'd take him out, put him on the side of the console, the recording console.
So that's probably what intimidated them. I mean, anybody would probably be intimidated.
But you weren't intimidated?
No.
Why?
Because I've seen a lot of that in Brooklyn. But the thing is that, the rumor is that the gun was pointed at Jonny and it wasn't.
Phil Spector, doing your album Into the Century, that must have been quite a buzz to work with that man.
Yeah, well, he approached us 3 years ago in Los Angeles and told us he wanted to make a comeback and he was looking for somebody original and doing something different, and he told us he was a big fan of ours and that he wanted to do an album together.
Well, I've been a big fan of Phil Spector's for ages, too.
Yeah,
It's a great album, too, Into the Century.
Phil Spector was a huge Ramones fan. He saw us and he gave us the great compliment of saying that we were the first band he's seen since the Rolling Stones that excited him, or something like that. And I thought, wow, that was a major compliment from him. And so yeah, he very much wanted to work with the Ramones.
Each producer brought their own little thing to the thing. They were always looking for somebody that would take them over the top, Phil Spector, Graham Gouldman, John Beauvoir, somebody that the people, just take them to the radio stations. Hey, let's play this album finally,
I'm not quite sure he knew what he was up against. Because the Ramones were so strange to work with to begin with. And from what I hear, he's a little bit strange himself. So it's like the combination is wow.
Well, I don't know exactly what makes him tick. I don't know exactly, how this guy went about making all the hit records that he did, before the end of the century. But it was just crazy to the way he was doing and what he was doing, working with Ramones. It was insane.
He was a very controlling producer, and some people, Joey loved him, Jonny hated him, Marky loved him, and he was crazy. He was out of his mind, but he's another crazy genius.
It's definitely a very interesting record, and there's a lot of talent that goes into it from both sides. So it's certainly a historic record for sure.
It should have been great. It could have been great. I don't know exactly what happened. It's overproduced, that's for sure. I think that what happened is that instead of Phil coming close to the Ramones, what he did was to bring the Ramones into his world. And it should have been the other way around. I think that he's the one that should have, dived into the Ramones world and apply his technique and his style. But basically, it turned out to be more of a Spector album than a Ramones album. It should have been the other way around. Yeah, they were disgusted with the way things were being done and where rock and roll was going. At least Jonny was, consciously. They were trying to do something that would bring rock and roll back to its roots.
You started punk, kind of.
Well,
we consider it a genuine rock and roll, from the gut,
Rock and roll was meant for punks, and it started.
I guess Elvis Presley started
in the
rock and roll or
mid-50s.
something,
Yeah, but punk is an answer to all the glitter and the stuff that costs a lot of money that you can afford.
Punk is just a rebellious rock for all kids all over.
I mean, real rock and roll is punk.
Not a bunch of old men playing music for your mothers and fathers. And that's what you have now. It's what they call rock.
For instance?
Styx.
Yeah, Styx, Kansas, Foreigner, stuff like that. Your parents should listen to this.
Is it mellowing out?
My mother doesn't even listen to that.
Your mother's more hip than that?
Yeah.
It's just they just want to clean up music and just push mediocrity on the on the public.
The genre has gotten very strange by that point. Songs were like 6 minutes long with lots of solos and sort of virtuosity, which at first was great when it was practiced by Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and people like that, had really, 6 years on, it just got too messy. So we wanted to strip that down to its elements. We tried to bring back the original feel of rock and roll.
Well, they listened to a lot of music growing up. Beatles, Stones, Who.
Little Richard, Fats Domino, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, the Everly Brothers, and on and on. And these people really influenced us.
Fillmore East used to be down here. We saw all sorts of like Sly and the Family Stone, Blues, B.B. King, and we saw The Cream, and we saw Jimi Hendrix, and we saw a lot of stuff that was going on at the time. So, and then they were all influenced by that.
Hi everybody, I'm Marky Ramone, and I want to also thank my influences, the early rockers like Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Elvis Presley. I want to thank the people who influenced me from the British invasion, like the Beatles, Stones, the Kinks, the Dave Clark Five, Jerry and the Pacemakers, and also the Motown Sound, the early bluesmen, and Isaac Hayes was great. And also for Jonny Ramone asking me to join the Ramones in 1978. And especially Tommy Ramone, who started that drum style that I had to work very hard to duplicate. And thank you very much.
And then later on, when the Stooges came out and MC5, you know, they influenced us a lot because, again, there was like a pure essence of rock and roll in that. Also, we saw that these people were from like Detroit, sort of a kind of there was like a sort of rawness that they had that was very appealing to us. There's a lot of influences on the Ramones because we loved a lot of things. Our tastes were like amazingly eclectic, all things considered.
At that time, back in the early 70s, there were a few places for not top 40 cover bands to play, you know, that weren't just playing the cover songs. There was a Mercer Arts Center. That place fell down. Unfortunately, Max's Kansas City, it closed up. And CB's kind of happened by chance. He wanted to open up a country, bluegrass, and blues. That's what CBGBs means. And it was, this area at the time was like the Bowery. It was a lot of bums, and it was like raw, and it was a dumpy bar. And Hilly decided to take a chance on booking just unknown bands. They asked Hilly, and Hilly said, okay, you can play. You know, you were going to a club, and there was like 10 people there, or 15 people, and half of the 15 people didn't understand what was going on because they never saw anything like that. A few times they would go on stage and, you know, play different songs, and they would yell at each other. You know, they didn't know what they were doing, and so they'd develop on stage. They start playing different songs, and he'd say, hey, you're not playing the right song, blah, blah, blah. Very rare. It didn't happen. It was just in the beginning. After that, they realized that the beauty of the Ramones is the regimentation. It was all together. They wanted to make sure that they went from one song to another song. There's no breaks in between songs. There's no chit-chat in between songs. They don't tune the guitars between songs. It was like a machine. They wanted to keep it very much like a machine going.
Whatever happens, they were just going to keep going and not stop. So nobody ever did that before, but they were these short little bouncy songs played at full speed and as loud as they could get it, and it just went one song into the other with maybe a 1, 2, 3, 4, and you know, and it caused a little bit of a sensation. It was a little different. Nobody else did it.
Sort of what you saw is what you got. I mean, there's a lot of genuineness there. You know, I mean, these people were like somewhat strange people, you know, and so it was just a natural, raw rock and roll band.
You know, they were tried to look mean and nasty, but they were having fun. So that combination with that high velocity drive, I think it startled people, and people started coming very quickly, more and more and more and more. They started coming out. So within a short time, the place was packed.
We were kind of a rough and tumble band at the time, and every record company in New York turned us down. Sire Records decided to take a chance on us, you know. So with the smallest budget in history, we made the first album.
The Ramones had already been playing live for, you know, the entire year of 1975. And the sound was complete. I would say that by the time the Ramones got into the studio to do the first album, their sound had already come together. And I could tell that Tommy was being very loyal to this and trying to keep it very real, very tight to what the Ramones sounded like.
We felt it important that we make the album, good. So we were very serious about it, and we understood what was at stake. We did it very fast, very cheaply, with engineers who had never heard anything like that, because no one has ever heard anything like what we were playing.
Probably even Tommy himself got caught by surprise by the limitations of translating the songs with all their might and power.
My drums were set up at the other end of the recording studio, which is a very long, place, in a totally isolated booth. It was hard for me to get from there to the studio. And that combined with the fact that we had 12 hours to mix the whole album.
It was very fast. They had very little money. But they didn't need a lot of production money, and they didn't need a lot of time. The Ramones never liked to take a lot of time recording. It was just fast, take 1, 2, 3 takes, boom, boom, boom. And that's how it comes out. And it happens to work for the Ramones.
Jonny's impatience started to come alive right there and then. One of Jonny's most common phrases was, "What's the holdup?" What's going on? What's the holdup? Jonny wanted things done immediately. I think Joey was enjoying it very, very much. I think that Joey didn't mind, didn't care, going through whatever it took, to make sure that everything was gonna be all right. Jonny was the opposite. But Jonny was so efficient. Well, the style of what he was doing just lent itself to, do it fast, do it quick, do it right. And Jonny always did it right, from the first time. And people like to say that the Ramones songs are very simple and that anybody can play them. I must have heard throughout the years probably hundreds of people playing Ramones songs, and nobody ever comes close to sounding like John.
Now, it's very hard, especially at the speed that the Ramones played, to play like that.
Downstrumming, nobody was doing it at the time. Most people play like this. He was just going down, 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 down. He developed the whole thing just to fit the Ramones style,
I thought Jonny Ramone was a brilliant guitarist for what he was doing. I mean, he came up with an original, unique style of guitar playing. He knew what he was good at and perfected it to the ultimate degree. So as far as punk rock guitar is concerned, he was the best.
I think he was a genius. A genius, to me, by definition, is somebody who invents his profession. And that is very, very different from being a technically accomplished musician. I had this discussion with John a couple of times. I told him that I felt the Ramones were way better artists than musicians. To him, that was too artsy-fartsy an statement. Every single song is good. Now, don't ask me which songs are on each album, because I probably cannot tell you.
Leave Home was sort of a change-up. What we were going for on Leave Home was a sort of a pop sound, because we liked pop music, and I guess we were in that kind of mood for that album. You get these psychotic songs with psychotic lyrics, with these happy-go-lucky pop melodies. And so that's basically the Leave Home album. We spent a little more time producing it and making it. We had a higher budget. We worked in a nice, comfortable studio with good equipment, and so that was a lot of fun making that record. Very much so. I happen to like Susie's a Headbanger very much, because to me that's like our country song. It's got a countryish melody. with psychotic lyrics.
Chewing out a rhythm in my bubble gum. How American is that? You know, how happy American teenager is that?
Yes, Rocket Russia was our peak in every way, in songwriting, in playing, performance, recording, production. Well, you know, it was a well-made album.
They were getting a little better at trying to translate the speed and the intensity of the live performances, and I think that Rocket to Russia is the best attempt.
The Ramones were very fortunate in having 4 very talented songwriters, you know. Different songs were written by different people, and but it was great, you know, because by starting with the second album, and especially Rocket to Russia, a lot of the songs were started to be written all together. You know, where we'd all basically contribute to the songs. We didn't write in the studio. The records were made fast. There was no time to write songs in the studio.
Losing Tommy was a bit of a shock. Even though we kind of knew that he wasn't that happy.
At the time, Tommy really, I mean, he, as I said, really started as a producer, and then he wanted to engineer and produce. So they kind of talked him into playing drums, and you know, it was great. But the road was too much for him.
What made the Ramones so great, you know, their high-strung energy and their sort of strange behavior created some great songs, but it also made it very hard to be with them round the clock for someone like me, and so it sort of like was disorienting, and I was starting to lose touch with reality, because their reality isn't the average reality.
I think that the fact that the Ramones' recording career did not get the level of success that was expected, that reflected on Tommy. Especially in the Ramones culture, especially in Jonny's world, somebody always had to pay. You know, when something didn't work, there had to be a guilty person, and the guilty person had to pay. That was Jonny's way. And I think that Tommy had to pay. So Tommy started being treated with less and less respect. So Tommy decides to leave, and everybody is kind of shocked and surprised. But of course, Jonny, in all his practical wisdom, decides it doesn't really matter. You know, that anybody that plays drums, that Tommy, if Tommy can teach him and explain to them the style, will do fine.
He said, look, I'll produce the band, we'll find a drummer who can play better drums than me. They said, yeah, it's a good idea. And Marky happened to be in the scene. They knew Marky. He was with lots of groups, the Voidoids and television, and he goes way back. Great drummer. Brought him in. Tommy worked with him for a few months or so, and terrific. Fit in. He's a Ramone.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marky Ramone. And I want to thank all of our fans who continue to perpetuate the legacy of the Ramones around the world. They're still there, and I hope it continues. Again, This is amazing. I never expected this, and I'm sure that Jonny, Joey, and Dee Dee would never expected this, but we got it. I'm extremely honored. Joey Ramone was the perfect histrionic singer. Dee Dee Ramone was a whirlwind hurricane. And Jonny Ramone definitely influenced thousands of guitar players around the world. And if it wasn't for this group, there wouldn't be the genre that we call punk rock. So, thank you very much.
You know, when things were the most difficult for me and for things just happening, you know, you remember more clearly, and I was more attached to the original band. But Marky's came, you know, a few years later, and he's done a very good job. I can't say who's better or not.
I felt that Marky was a very good drummer. He could definitely hit the drums harder than Tommy. And I think that at that point, you know, Tommy having created this style, come up with the formula, I think that it was, you know, if not irrelevant, not terribly important, who was playing the drums.
He was very enthusiastic, and basically he combined his style with my style. And what we did at that point was shift gears. The Ramones were becoming more of a professional band. So Marky was perfect to come in at that point. That album was very influential in its sound and production techniques, and I'm very proud of Road to Ruin. I was working with Ed Stasium, and it was just, I felt like a kid in a toy store. I had full reins and everything, and we used wonderful studios, and it was great working with Mark. You know, we set up the drums and got a great drum sound, you know, and the sound on that album is magnificent. We were trying to make a more commercial, radio-friendly record at the time, because they weren't accepting the great albums we were making before. So we were trying to maybe, if we met them halfway, we felt, then they might play us on the radio.
I think that right after end of the century, I felt like it was open season on the Ramones. I mean, anything goes. They'll try, you know, the record companies will just try anything and everybody to try to get something out of the Ramones. You know, they became like guinea pigs. I thought it was ridiculous.
How do you feel about the bands that you really inspired back in the mid-'70s, like Blondie and these people, that have, in a sense, commercially eclipsed you? Does that make you mad at all?
No. I mean, they took that way to do that, play, you know, disco music, things like that to make it. We do what we believe in, we have our integrity, and we're happy doing what we do.
We're the only band that's stuck to its original ideals, you know. Everybody else took the easy route, you know. Everybody else either went the sound of Bruce Springsteen, like Elvis Costello and people like that, or they went disco, or they went reggae or something like that. And we're the only band that stuck to our original idea, you know. And
which was hard-driving rock and roll.
That's what rock and roll's all about, you know.
Yeah.
And we're not mad. We're doing what we want to do, and we're happy doing this.
And you're making some money?
Right.
Obviously.
I mean, there's room for everybody. There's no reason to shut out one kind of music, you know. There's room for everybody, you know.
Well, you know, the Ramones would cycle between trying to have a commercial record to going back to their roots, you know, depending on what producer they brought in. That was them, I guess, going for a more rock and roll thing.
Dee Dee consistently would write good songs, but I think that the sound was nowhere. It was getting farther and farther away from what made the Ramones great.
I'm glad they experimented. I think it's good that they, this way they have a nice variety of albums and different sounds for different people, you know. And this offers the public a lot of variety to listen to.
They just started getting lost. I think Jonny knew it, and Joey kept trying and thinking, you know, he didn't want to give up, and he kept hoping that something would get done and the band would get a hit. But I think that Jonny just gave up, and they just wanted to concentrate on the performances, you know, on touring. That was the only thing that mattered.
Oh, that's what I said in the movie, End of the Century. Maybe. This makes a good story, though. And they talk. It wasn't like they never said anything to each other. They had to communicate. But it's, you know, like in a van, they wouldn't talk to each other. I talked to Jonny, Jonny talked to Marky, Marky talked to Joey, Joey talked to Marky. Just Joey wouldn't talk directly to Jonny because he didn't want to talk to him, you know. Which is a good idea, basically, because they realized the Ramones on stage were a bigger thing, you know. Now, if they started talking and fighting, then the group would break up. You know, or they hurt each other, but they realized once they got on stage, it was something totally different. Off the road, it's better not talk to him, you know, just ignore him at the time. Not fight, which is a great idea. If they fought, they'd hurt each other, kill each other, and the band would split up. There would be no more getting on stage as the Ramones. So it was a smart thing to do. If you really haven't listened to it, and people kind of heard things about it, they'll just say, Ramones, forget about it, there's nothing there.
People who say that don't really understand, they haven't had a chance to really listen to the songs.
If you listen to the music, there's something there. It's a lot deeper than people think. There's a lot more going on than people think in the songs and the structure. You know, there was all very well thought out and structured. I mean, that was good. Jonny was very good at that. He was very good at structuring things. He was very taskmaster-ish. That's why Dee Dee didn't, towards the end, he didn't like being told what to do and too much, you know. So he kind of wanted to just go, I don't want to be in the Ramones army anymore. I'm leaving, you know, goodbye.
The Ramones style of music is 100% punk.
The Ramones didn't so much create punk as start a whole genre of music which led on to alternative music, new wave music, punk rock, modern rock.
They were a catalyst for what was going on.
You know, there's nobody that sounds like them, otherwise you think they're copying the Ramones. I mean, it's a very definite sound and kind of thing they do.
I'm not sure who said it, but somebody said, a critic said, that punk existed because of the false assumption that the Ramones could be imitated.
It's just a wonderful feeling to feel like you're in the best band in the world, which is the way I felt when I was working on those records. And I felt very privileged to be able to be at that place doing this. I couldn't believe that this was actually happening.
The Ramones were geniuses, musical geniuses. They're not Eric Clapton. Let's put it that way, you know what I mean? Eric Clapton's a great musician. The Ramones are great artists who play music, the best punk rock in the world.